Bravo for Washington. That was just brilliant. Thank you so much. And we should welcome Washington Farjado, a Loeb Fellow from 2019. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Virginia. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to show a little bit of my city.
Oh, it's just a wonderful tour, but some really big agenda items. And maybe we should start with just how are you feeling after yesterday? If we consider some of the topics we covered yesterday, talking about some of the innovative ideas and investments in culture that have made urban centers more dynamic and vibrant city centers. But what came up a lot yesterday was also more expensive and how inequity and disparity threaten that kind of economic and racial and cultural diversity that fueled the rise in the first place. You're dealing with very different challenges. What were some of the takeaways for you?
Wow, yesterday was a really good day. Congratulations, Virginia. And it's really fascinating to see how different different cities and different issues. It's fascinating to see how downtown Rio, everything's based on culture. You have an outstanding outdoor lifestyle with music in bars, a lot of culture, not only in museums and cultural centers, but also happening in the streets. But at the same time, it's not sustainable because we don't have inhabitants, we don't have residents living there, and that's for a long time. We had opportunity to increase the quality of the infrastructure in recent years, but the matter of housing is not, in my opinion, it's not yet a clear topic for Brazilian society. It's something that we as architects, we used to talk about it, but housing is not so clear, and how housing policies would be beneficial for to capture, especially areas so well infrastructure like downtown, to cap it into a sustainable way.
Right. As you said, you're starting from scratch. So who lives in downtown Rio now?
It's a mix of working class with local businesses, business owners, public servants, and I would say a medium class. It's affordable. It's I would say if you consider other if you compare the offering of public space and infrastructure, it's very affordable if you compare with other areas. What's happened in the city and in the last 30 years, it's a very intense urban sprawl towards the west zone of the city. That means that we got the worst travel time in the whole metropolitan areas of Brazil, here in Rio, because people moving to far areas, but they still work in downtown. Downtown of Rio, it's the highest concentration of jobs in the whole metropolitan area. The city of Rio, it's 6 million inhabitants. The metropolitan area is 12 million. And we got here in downtown around 800,000 jobs just in this small piece of land. That means that every day something about 1 million people commute to downtown. And that means a tremendous opportunity to live here.
Right. And this is something that, in cities like in Washington, D.C., the D.C. mayor, Muriel Bowser, she's doing a $20 million workforce housing fund to help subsidize housing for people who live in communities, teachers, police, janitors, social workers. This is something that could be of appeal to, I know, as you said, you're trying to sell this to political leaders, academics, and developers in some kind of way, but there are models for that, and also models for housing for artists as something to drive people in who are looking for cheaper rent. And Susan Chin asks, she loved your walking tour and your commentary, by the way. What types of people are you targeting to locate here, and are you including artists?
We don't have this type of definition in the law that we did, but we did specifically for all the working class that can be supported by the federal policies. They they can apply for the new regulation in Rio's downtown, and also to public servants. And that's one of the really important innovation for students from affirmative action in universities in Brazil. And that's something also that I learned during my time as Loeb Fellow. We don't deal with racial issues on the matter of housing policies here. And I think this law, it's the first of its kind that at the same time, it's providing a housing policy and also consider as priority groups, as a priority social group, the students that came from affirmative action in federal universities in Brazil. These policies have been changing Brazilian society. It's really fabulous to see Black young people having opportunities that the previous generation didn't have. But at the same time, we don't consider other policies for them. And especially housing, it's critical. I have been dealing with Black young youth. They were engineers. They went to social science. They went to medicine, to several studies and professionals. But at the same time, they still have to live in the peripheral areas of the city, and they don't have specific opportunities to move to more inner city areas. That's something that we did in this regulation.
Well, this is such a big topic in Brazil, obviously, race, housing, and in every country that we deal with or that we talk about and live within. But I think it might be instructive to sort of talk about that, some of the social and cultural associations with housing in Rio and the country at large. There was this very big push from the government aimed at home ownership in Brazil. This started, 2009, 2010, Minha Casa, Minha Vida. So my house, my life. Just a summary on that, just so we can understand some of the context of the push for or for people to own housing rather than to rent. Where is that bias coming from?
And that's something that I have been advocating for a long time, and because we have a very, very limited understanding of housing policies here. If you look to the country, it's Brazil. It's the majority based on ownership. It's more than 70% of households. They were owners. But all the policies since the 30s, and then especially when you look to the 60s, and that's the tricky thing, even into this progressive period that we got in Brazil in recent years, we did the same. And then I start to ask why we are doing the same over time. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, Virginia, I think it's something related with this modern architecture was a really powerful achievement in Brazil. We did Brasilia, we got Oscar Niemeyer, and Oscar Niemeyer was not only a really fantastic architect, but at the same time, he lives more than 100 years. Mm-hmm. That means that it was 1 century of collaboration of just one architect. And modern architecture somehow occupied space as a national pride. So we are proud of these architects. We are proud of Brasilia. We are proud of these ideas of the modernist urban planning till now. So here in Brazil, every election time, we are going to see a politician repeating the same slogan of the Brazilian construction, that we are going to do 50 years in just 5 years. That was the main slogan at the time. And so I believe that it's a symbolic thing attached to the Brazil identity. And that's why when I started to talk about social housing, it's a social rent, and affordable housing, inclusionary zoning. It's other ways to achieve a more diverse city. It's really hard to address that. Everything is still based on ownership.
It's a huge cultural shift, obviously. But as we saw yesterday, there are, ways of insertions of culture that can move the culture along. And I'm not saying that's a one size fits all thing, but there's some suggestions here from folks. Now, I remember being in downtown Rio and actually maybe even looking at a guidebook. So I went back to TripAdvisor just to check this to make sure. And it said, along Carioca Street, which is the street that you brought us to, which was so vibrant, you can spend 1 hour there. That's all there is there, that there wasn't a lot going on. And Lex Lally says, putting cultural facilities in areas of the city is a big incentive for people to go there. LA is an example of that. The Disney Hall, art museums, et cetera. You already have some of those beautiful features and colonial buildings in this fantastic library that you showed us. Why are those not sort of regarded as assets for drawing people to downtown Rio, or how can you make them more appealing?
I think there's the supply, the residential supply in the area. It's the lowest in the whole city in the last 3 decades, and that means that even if you consider to move to downtown, it's going to be really hard to find a place. That's why I have been putting energy on that. I think that's the main aspect. With all the local real estate industry have been only looking to other areas and not doing nothing here, even during the Olympic period. So at that time, we started to talk about how downtown could be really good to live in, but right now I think we achieve a good way of how to do that, and it's working quite well because of this new law. But I think it's also something related with the public space. Sometimes the public space is too institutional, like the square that I showed to you, and I have been thinking about using strategies to communicate those public space also as good to families. So we are considering to bring some weekend playgrounds, because when you went to, I did also in the recording, you see a family, the father with her daughter playing ball in the main square of downtown, something that you can see from Monday to Friday. So putting those things during the weekends in order to attracting more people, families to public space. And it's once again, it's a cultural challenge.
Yeah, right. When I first lived in Manhattan, in Midtown, and it completely cleared out at night. So obviously there has to be a reason for people to come there during the day and on the weekends. Catherine Warner asks, what is your vision? I know you're talking about housing, and I really do want to get to retrofitting office building, but Catherine asks, what is your vision for the role of parks and plazas downtown?
That's what I said. It's we had a fantastic squares, but because they got this institutional design, it's very symbolic. Everything's about the representation, statues and monuments. This human scale, especially for kids, I believe that you can find that. But you can see families trying to find a way of having some possible joy on the public space during the weekends. But once again, we need more residential supply. The offering is not enough. They don't have enough quality. That means that we need also to improve, to do a lot of the existing housing stock need to be improved as well. But we are following these steps. First, increase the housing supply, then make the improvements of the local stock, and then start developing other associate policies, especially devote to social rent, to lower income families.
Well, I believe you said that 60% increase in 6 months, in the first 6 months of this new policy, permits to increase the supply of market housing downtown. So clearly the desire is there. How much new and how much are you thinking retrofitting? Is the majority of these retrofitting, or what's the mix there?
Yeah, in origin, in 6 months, we got more than 1,600 residential units under building permits. That means something around 12% of population increment in the area. And what is fantastic that those numbers means almost 60% of the last decade of housing production in the area, and retrofit it's really hard to developers. Developers, they don't, especially when you live into a culture of sprawl. Why do some refurbishment if you just go to a green field and make a new building? And it's really an aspect of the rules of economics of the real estate sector, and that's why we put a lot of we did a lot of effort to understand the prices in the area, the prices in the area associated to other areas where people have been buying homes the last 20 years in the city. And to have a better understanding of the real estate dynamic in the city.
You said that developers have to pay for access to the urban core. So this is the idea that you give buildings bonuses in place where the housing markets are hot, and then you connect with charging them for access to the urban core. What kind of incentives are you actually offering to developers to build in downtown?
We essentially three kind of incentives: tax exemptions, property tax exemptions. We have a tax over the first. We have a tax exemption over the first buying, and then also removing tax for city licenses. And the second thing, it's the property tax exemption. It's for 5 years, but if the developer provides 20% of units for social for affordable housing, then it's going to be 30 years of property tax exemptions. But for sure, the most important thing was this bonus, because we are somehow allowing them to build more where they want to build more. But to do that, they have to pay. And they have to pay to do investments or paying for the city hall or paying directly doing investments in downtown. So it's working quite well. And I think we achieved a really good trick. And everything's based on reconverting office space, just to be clear. We don't give all these kind of incentives if you buy already existing housing building. Everything's based on converting commercial and corporate space into residential.
Karen Blondell wants to know about on the subject of these subsidies, who reviews and enforces the commitments? Doesn't the bonus, she asks, create a separation based on classicism?
No, I don't think so. If you look to the hot areas, we are talking about basically the shoreline neighborhoods of Rio. It's Copacabana, Ipanema, and all these areas. The real estate market's really intensive, but at the same time we have some old, very strange regulations from the past, basically controlling density of some specific plots, something around 200 plots that have this specific regulation. And we knew that. We knew that the developers, they want to build more in those plots. Then we use that as opportunity. But this is one part. But there's other part also allowing them to build more associated with public transportation infrastructure. But for sure, the first, what they are looking for, it's where is better for them. And everything's based on supporting downtown. And although this new production, it's a priced market housing, the local prices are somehow affordable. We are not. It's we don't have wealthy apartments in downtown, and at the same time we put some regulations to avoiding a market bubble, like giving incentives to affordability in downtown, and at the same time all this. It's not a tax. It's some kind of a city payment, and using this payment to developing housing for low-income families.
Okay, so
sorry, just to add that it's really looking to producing a mixed income area.
Right,
and that it's totally different from other areas in the city. We still had a very segregated, different neighborhoods in town, and what we are looking for in downtown, it's totally the opposite. We can achieve a very mixed type of income and also cultural diversity.
yeah, I want to put a pin in that and come back to it, but I do want to get to this conversion of office buildings, because this is something that's happening all across the world, certainly here in the US. Office buildings, urban cores hollowed out during the pandemic. People are not going to work anymore. And that's a question from Tracy Metz. She wants to know if the pandemic and working from home would help Rio realize that it will need to retrofit some of the office buildings. One upside. And I'm gonna do a follow on there because I think they're really related. Marcel, he points out that it is really a challenge to convert office buildings to residential from a physical standpoint. Deep plates, column spacing, access to windows, plumbing, etc. Are you looking at public policy tools, e.g. financial incentives, zoning regulations to encourage these conversions? That's something that they're exploring in downtown DC and I think other cities across the world.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We in the 60s, downtown got this terrible zoning and basically not allowing residential in the area. Everything should be commercial and business in downtown. And this law was removed in 1994, but it didn't change the place. And because if you look to the zoning of the area, it's very mixed. You can have it housing, but we don't have there is just a few plots. Everything's based on everything existing. It's a very consolidated area. So the main transformation should be buying retrofitting, and the costs of retrofitting can be really high, and also the construction aspect, it's very difficult. But at the same time, when you look to, it's fascinating because buildings from the 30s and the 40s, they used to be mixed. But then if you look to buildings from the 60s to the 70s and so on, the buildings became more technological. And it's harder as construction and also more expensive. And that's why we have been seeing the developers looking for oldest office building and not the newest one. Mm-hmm. Working from home, also it's really important to understand that because he used to be the capital, we still have a lot of federal agencies in downtown. That means that a lot of public property here. And that's one of the most hardest thing to do. And we start this as a city. I have tried to some kind of coordination with federal agencies, especially the housing department, but it was almost impossible to work with them. But right now, after all this fast transformation, some federal banks have been looking for our plan as a good solution. Even other cities, the city of Porto Alegre in the south just approved a law quite similar to our law. São Paulo is doing the same, and also other cities in Northeast. I have been having conversation with the planning chiefs of planning of other cities in the last 6 months because of this result.
I mean, it does sound, Washington, like you really have been able to get some things done and create some real movement in a short amount of time. I would love to understand a little bit like your whole place, how Rio works with the federal or central government, or your place in this function, because it seems like you are able to really make things move.
Cities in Brazil, they had a lot of autonomy, but for sure that could be much more easier if I could count, especially with financial support. It's, you know, if you look to the 90s, when the city started the Favela Bairro program to do uprising favelas, it was basically the same. The federal government didn't believe in this possibility, and then it became one of the national benchmark for favelas uprising. Well, I have my 2 feet on the ground. I don't like to celebrate, but I think we are in the good way. But as I told you during my walk tour, the biggest challenge is about to come. It's doing social rent and how to manage that, and how to explain to people that it's not based on ownership, that the apartment is going to belong to the city hall, then we are going to be a tenant of the city hall. And it's a huge shifting how we have been doing housing in the country. Right. And in that way, sometimes I feel a little bit alone, although my staff, and there's a lot of people that also believe on that, but it's really hard.
Well, right. Political leaders don't get it so far, as you told us. Academics, developers don't. Question here from Susan Chin. Would you create a housing agency or partner with an NGO who would administer your social rent housing, similar to Carol Lamberg's settlement housing organization?
We are just starting to do that. We are crafting a city housing company. And I think it's going to be the solution. In the city of Rio, everything's very departmentized. Is that the word? So I'm in charge of the planning, and there is someone in charge of the housing, etc. But because as planning director, I have been really pushing forward the new ideas for housing, and because I'm also the president of the Institute for Urbanism in the city, that means that I have this really good staff, and especially everything's we have all the GIS department, and I have all the data from the city. So we have been using all this evidence as a way to not only to be a speech, but using data and numbers to show, especially to political leadership, how this new housing rental and developing I don't know the word, apartments that would belong to the city, and at the same time create a housing agency. Mm-hmm. That's exactly we just start to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this often comes up in cities with governments that they can't imagine doing it like other people do it. There's a sense of terminal uniqueness. You know, we're different. We do things differently here. We have different traditions. And of course, there are different traditions, but there are a lot of incentives to try. Gina asks, perhaps a live-work concept, or suggests a live-work concept to incentivize owner-occupied inner-city dwelling, helping the street vendors build equity, reactivate vacant buildings, and facilitate reorganizing of the public spaces. It's a really great suggestion.
Thank you, Gina. I love to see you yesterday. It's the street vendors are. It's. You know, I have been trying to map that, Gina, and it's if you look to the main train station in downtown, all the surroundings is based on a warehouse for street vendors' products. So that means all the street vendors, they came by train, and then they have this. All this neighborhood based on supplying and products for street vendors, and then they came to downtown. But at the same time, sometimes we are going to see some criminal activities. We have some also issue with immigrants in some parts of downtown. It's really difficult issue. That's why I believe that this social rent for low-income families could also be really good for people that are red, and we have been considered that as one of the main criteria. People should be working downtown as a way to get access to these units.
And looking at some of the history, and certainly I think we all are aware of the favelas of Rio, the informal developments on the periphery. And you talked about how people are getting pushed further and further to the periphery, some really high rent housing and some actually these informal developments. And there's been this prevailing, let's say, political view that the poor should get only poor solutions. This is, of course, part of this urban phenomenon that's been going on for a long time. But in Rio, the urban core has been ignored while the focus and projects have shifted to the periphery for middle and upper income housing. So are there particular cultural prejudices or impediments in Brazil of mixed income areas, of low income residents living near people in the middle class or the upper class?
Yeah, it's favelas can be also a not good term to define all the complexities of the issue, mm-hmm. because you can look to a favela, then consider, okay, a favela in the hill into the wealthy neighborhood of Rio, like happened in the 50s. Like happening in Panema, Copacabana, etc. And those type of favelas, like was defined in the 60s, those favelas are a really good solution to gain access to opportunities, because amid of the lack of the housing policies, people were able to find a solution to stay close off jobs. But that's just one type of favelas. When you go to the west zone of Rio, we are going to see also favelas. So we are talking, in that case, that we are talking about favelas that people need 2 hours to commute to find one to their work, and with a huge lack of infrastructure, and all of that, it's a consequence of not this very discontinued housing policies international level, but also not really consider other ways of offering access to the opportunities of the urban centers. Our constitution says 6 times about the right to housing and the right to the city. It's a really fantastic definition if you look to the law, and not just one time. It's 6 times in the same constitution. But that's my main critic. So where is the implementation of that? So where is the policy, and what? And then when you start to follow the money, we are going to see the money subsidize construction for upper middle class. And that was the case of Minha Casa Minha Vida, because since the beginning it was a policy to deal with the 2009 financial crisis, looking for jobs creation, but not looking for housing production in the way that could really create really good cities.
One of the things that did happen, you talked about how the Olympics kind of changed the city, 100 mile of rapid bus lanes, $7 billion in US dollars in transportation funds, removing that elevated highway, new tunnels, the light rail system that you showed us a little bit of. There was a huge impetus and a lot of public benefit. But how about housing? You said that it was somewhat ignored. Now, if I'm remembering correctly from my research, I think I have a note here somewhere, that there was a promise of some 75,000 units of affordable housing built, but many people, most of them poor, lost their homes to projects related to the Olympics. How did that work out in Rio? How do you see that balance? Was there a net gain?
Yeah, once again, it was related with this very wrong policy based on Minha Casa Minha Vida.
Same thing.
The biggest.
It all comes back to that, which I think is so fascinating that there's still this.
Till now, look, it was a policy created by the Workers' Party, and now we have this terrible president, but it's doing the same, and it's quite possible that we're going to see another political change in the country, and I think the housing policy is going to be the same, because it's really, really good to construction companies. One of the biggest one now, they got also the owner of the construction company now is also the owner of a TV network, and that's why I believe that the urban centers, and because of the huge empathy that people has for downtown areas, could start to change that. And at least I hope that I could just make one small contribution in that process. I clearly remember my application to the Loeb Fellowship, and I wrote about it, about this frustration of didn't see housing transformation. And it's something that sometimes I use also to be very critical about the education of architects, because we like to celebrate buildings like the Pedregulho housing building here. It's a fantastic shape. It's a curved, long building in the top of the hill, inspired by Corbusier sketches, but it never worked as housing. So we need also to understand housing as a process, or housing as a verb, and instead of just consider housing as one architectural solution. But and then the idea of ownership and the idea of designing this architecture, this building, it became also sometimes good for architects. Although Minha Casa Minha Vida, they have no architects at all. It was everything based on stamped buildings all across the country.
Ken Krukemeyer has an interesting suggestion to get the real estate industry to support rental housing. Condos may be, quote, safe deposit box. Ownership can increase capital creation, but reduce available units for the next generation.
That's good. That's really good. I would like to know more. Yes, please. Yes, I have been. Right now, the developers they have been asking me for to start to talk about affordable housing, especially because now they start to understand all this cycle of investments that we produce. So we try to create some kind of a circular economy for the residential investment in the area, because you are going to have your profit, but then you have to pay something for downtown into a continual way. and now they want to discuss affordable housing. But it's still hard because we are looking to the lower income, the real lower income. I'm talking about 0 to 3 minimum wage in Brazil. That means 300 reais per family. That would be per month. That would be something around 600 US dollars per month, as it's the three minimum wage range. And then we have the 3 to 6 minimum wage, and 6 to top, it's considered market price. And in the law, we have the 3 levels. We have the market price as the main force, then we have the affordable, and then we have also the way to support this lower.
Pallavi asks, is there some equivalent or similar to Section 8? Is there something similar or equivalent to Section 8 housing? Some Indian cities have equivalent programs. Okay, you're shaking your head. Right. No. So this is part of the whole problem. Well, you know, in hearing people's individual suggestions, and also hearing how you are looking at the whole picture and the circles you're drawing, it sounds to me a little bit like what Deputy Julia Simons said yesterday, that it's not just the data points, it's telling the story. So maybe it's a little bit about thinking about the story differently. And I wonder if you've been workshopping that at all. And one of the things that comes to me is that this is a great opportunity for a Loeb collaboratory. So Cheryl Hughes, I hope you're listening. We should get this going, because I think a lot of people would probably like to help Washington out and flesh out some of these ideas. But tell me a little bit about how you're thinking. How have you been selling the story so far, and how do you want to tell it going forward?
Good. The first thing that I noticed that since day one, because I used to be in charge of the historic preservation department, so I understand that I shouldn't be associated with the history of the city, because it was really important for me, for the plan, to talk about the future, and avoiding this idea of as historical place. That means that you can live there, like sleeping in the museum. You have to pay care to not break anything. So when we have these historical centers, probably that's the main concept for downtown. That means that people love, but at the same time they consider this area very fragile. So and I try to avoid that, and I try to avoid even the use of the historic center during all the public meetings that I run, and really talk about the center as one of the best places in the city, the best infrastructure. You got really good hospitals, really good schools, public and private, and a fantastic public space. You got the most mixed retail activity in town, and using these assets that we used to looking for when we are looking to a place to live, and especially the issue of transportation, because Rio's downtown, it's a 5-minute city, to use this kind of term that everybody's using now. It's a 5-minute city. It's just about 5 minutes to reach some kind of a transportation model, and it's pretty easy to live there. And it's something, and also, and then showing, explain the downtown as a place that it got a lot of history, but it's also a place that had been transforming over time, and especially how this retrofit, it's also one of really good, really important commitment on climate change, because the greenest building that exists is the building that already exists, and associating also retrofit with recycling buildings, and in the law there's also a carbon zero district for the area. And we also have been supporting developers to looking for more carbon neutral practice and in their retrofit practices.
So I'm not being glib by saying this, but I think everybody who watched this video would love to come and join you in Rio for a lot of different reasons. But we have, of course, you're looking for density, hyper-localism, creating economies inside of an area within that urban core. And I'm not saying foreign buyers would be the solution, but just to open that up quickly, there are no restrictions for foreign buyers except for rural and border areas, as far as I know, in Brazil, right? So most of the foreign buyers of market housing in Rio are European, small amount from the US. Is there a opportunity there to encourage people who are foreign buyers to help create some life in this urban core?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. It's not so common in Brazilian cities. For sure, Rio is one of the cities that got the highest rate of. We had a huge French community here. Some Britain and also, but there is any kind of difficulty to that. But we are really looking to the local market. Yes, would be good to have this opportunity for sure, and there is no problems on that. But I have to convince the local people to understand social rent, and it would be much harder also at the same time try to attract foreign buyers. But I would love to have that for sure.
All right, last word to Lex Lally here. It's also a matter of priorities, or maybe what to do first, or let other things happen. I don't think you can resolve sustainability, racial equality, housing, balancing different areas of the city, retrofitting cultural facilities, develop of new buildings in landmark areas, tourism, economic development, et cetera, simultaneous. So what are the steps to take? It sounds like you are taking some of those. And what are the economic incentives for downtown revitalization in landmark areas? Remember, it's the economy, stupid, she says. And she said yes to Loeb collaboratory meeting. How about an alumni meeting in Rio? I think we'd all agree that's okay.
Yes, let's organize that for next year or maybe this year if you guys want. Yeah, it's I know there's a lot of things on my plate, but I have a very clear focus on. It's really important to bring people back. That's the main topic. It's people. It's the key issue for attracting more businesses, better public space activities. I think we didn't discuss that, but I rent apartments during 1 week in the beginning of the law, and it was really fascinating for this 1 week dealing with the local community, and I listen a lot, especially from women, telling me that they need to plan before go outside because they don't feel safe in the street, especially at night. And then I start to think to myself, what's the problem? Because everything, the public lighting is really good in downtown. It's one of the best. But then I start to walk at night in the streets and I really feel a lot of fear. And it's because it's basically empty, and you can, the facades are also closed, and that could be, and that creates a really more harsh perception to women. It was really valuable to learn from women in that experience. And so everything's based on, first, people bring people back, then improve the quality of public space, especially looking for children, and third, looking to recovering some landmarks and increase cultural activities in some areas. And I think that's my three main topics. And for sure, the social rent.
Well, you have a cabeza dura, as you said, a hard head, and you're the guy who likes to remove fences and knock down barriers. So let's ask, on the spectrum of hope to, I'm not going to say despair, but not hope, how are you feeling right now, Washington, about everything that you have to do?
Well, I'm always very optimistic, full of energy. Sometimes, as I said, I feel a little bit alone on this discussion of housing. It's something that I need to plan more, and it's having this collaborative work would be good.
Well, I'm really glad we got to speak with you today. Thank you so much for giving us a view of Rio de Janeiro in such an exacting and thoughtful way.
I like that.
Thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to a Loeb collaboratory with you.
Thank you, Virginia.
And I want to thank all the Loebs for your questions and your conversations. Really a lot to work with there. Coming up, 4 Mexico City neighborhoods. We're going to have 15 minutes to stretch. So you can stretch your legs. You can also go into chats. You can go into the networking hubs. It's right on your screen. Just click on the networking hubs. There are a couple operating, so you can hop in and out. We're going to return to in 15 minutes. So that's 12, let's say 45, 46 Eastern time with Mexico City. So please join us and enjoy a little break.